Welcome to Journey Through the Eyes, the EMDR podcast that is here to unveil and explore the transformative power of EMDR therapy. Here at Journey Through the Eyes, our mission is to support both the new and seasoned clinicians with the critical conversations, resources about EMDR therapy and how to build your amazing private practice. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Tamera J. Brown, licensed professional counselor and Andrea certified
Hey.
EMDR therapist. I'm so proud to say that. And I have with me my amazing co-host and special colleague and friend, Miss Kathy on the couch.
Hello, Kathy on the couch here, therapist with the last name Couch. So fun. We are here in Twin Falls, Idaho, and it's a beautiful Friday, and we're so excited to have our special guest, David Polidi. I hope I didn't damage that last
Oh,
name.
that was perfect. Said it perfectly.
And David actually reached out to us. He has his own podcast, and so we'll be on his and he'll be on ours. And so he can probably share some knowledge about podcasting. We're now in season 2, so we're just going to have a conversation with him today. He's an EMDR clinician, an IFS clinician as well. And so I'll just kind of turn it over to you, David, to maybe introduce yourself a little more.
Sure. Well, first off, it's an honor to be here, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm a fan of this podcast, and I think that yeah, you guys do great work. Um, about me, I have similar. I think I have very similar message to you guys, where it's just getting the message out there, right? I love that you're EMDRIA certified. I'm EMDRIA certified. I'm a consultant in training. So if you're out there, if you need a consultant, I'm game. Um, but then IFS, it's the certification is a long road. So I'm in the process of that as well. I work for the Internal Family Systems telehealth collective right now. So I'm taking clients from there. And I'm in Massachusetts. Sunny, beautiful Friday day here as
Yeah.
well. And yeah, I love to combine EMDR with other models, specifically IFS. And right now it's just an honor, and I'm game to talk about anything you want. On my podcast, I usually love to nerd out a bit
Yeah.
on this stuff. So I might veer in that direction, but whatever you guys want to talk about, I think will be beautiful.
Now, for our audience, could you just describe the name of your podcast and where they can find you?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's called Empowered Through Compassion. Just came up with the name because I feel like, what better way to be strengthened than through love and compassion? And you could find me www empoweredthroughcompassion.com. You can find me on Emdria, find me on the IFS Institute, through the IFS Telehealth Collective. But check out my website, www.empowered with the D through compassion.com.
And we'll have those in the episode notes as well. So
Great.
kind of, if you could kind of maybe describe this idea that you're having connecting with other podcasters and reaching out and building those networks. I think it's super important to build these networks and these, connections. I think one thing Tamera didn't
Yeah.
say, she's also a consultant in training. I think, that's exciting. I think as we're excited about one certification, also acknowledging we're also in training and working on that consultant status, I think is important. So kind of what I'd like to hear just starting out is, what was your journey sort of with EMDR? I know you believe in the power of it. Could you describe for our listening audience the journey from when you decided to be basic trained to become an EMDR certified clinician, and then what prompted you to start your consulting and training, and how that experience was for you?
Sure. Sure. That's a great question. Um, I've always been interested in trauma ever since I was a little kid. As a little kid, it was like, I hate this and I want to get rid of it. or I want to help, others who have trauma, get rid of their trauma. But then I went. My journey was out of school to work in a school, in an elementary, middle, high school. Again, trying to figure out, how do we create communities? How do we help people just be happy, and especially kids, right? To just feel good about themselves, feel good about each other. Um, the public school system was an interesting animal, so I won't go into that too much, um, unless you want me to, but I'll skip over that. After that, I worked with, more in depth with families, and community services, and really, I think, could really appreciate how much trauma could impact families. And, in Massachusetts, we have the ARC model, and I studied that and I taught that. And then I guess it wasn't until COVID where I was starting to do private, more private practice, small group practice, that I had a little bit of time on my hands. And I talked it out with my wife. What do I want to do, and where do I want to go? And that's where I just signed up for an EMDR class. It was something that I had taken. I had gone to a therapist for EMDR 10 years prior, 20 years prior. Um, but I was like, you know what? This is another tool, another way of looking at things, and it would be beautiful to just understand more. And when I took the class, and then I started using it with clients, and then I actually went back to therapy to have an EMDR therapist. There were parts about the model which I just loved, and there were parts of it that I think were a little bit harder for me to access. And so I also started to integrate other models, other ways of thinking. I mean, I love a lot about EMDR, and I love how there's the conceptualization of the phase model, and the different ways to conceptualize how everybody has this AIP, natural way of healing. I felt like I benefited a lot from learning more about the polyvagal theory. I learned more about incorporating concepts of attachment theory, and then I had friends from the class, and we met every week and shared resources, and kind of grew together. And one of my friends in that group started talking about IFS, and then since then I was gone on the IFS ride.
I have
You,
go ahead, Tamira.
well, David, you are saying you are talking my language, first of all. I want to kind of back the train up a little bit because you said something that really resonated and pulled at my heartstrings, and I think that whether it's a new seasoned clinician or just someone who comes across this conversation, we want to pour a little something into their cup, and that is that compassion. I loved how you talked about the need for more compassion, and how you just introduced, some of your works, and it just sounds like that is kind of at the heart and at the center of what you're doing. Your energy and your presence is so soft, right? And
Well,
so
thank
you
you.
could just tell that compassion, that it's present. um I want to ask you, David, what have you learned on your journey, right, that made you lean more into compassion?
Oh man, where do I begin? I mean, okay, so I love motivational interviewing. I'm going to circle back to your question here. One of the things that motivational interviewing does, when I share it with people, when I teach it, um, is they say, "Who is a role model? Who is a role model for you?" And think about, when you think about this role model, how do they make you feel? How do they listen? How do they honor you? How do they understand you? And it could be anybody. It could be somebody in your life. It could be somebody you don't know, but you've seen, a picture of. And I gotta say, my role model is the Dalai Lama. I was lucky enough to hear him talk, I think in 1999 in Central Park. He was introduced by Richard Gere, And then he came out, and it's the coolest thing when you see like thousands upon thousands of New Yorkers, like all centered in Central Park with love in their hearts. That's like, that alone is like magic. So I really love the Dalai Lama, and how he says compassion is his religion. I love spirituality. I try to bring spirituality into my podcast as well. I've heard people like Kay Gardner in the IFS world say you can't have trauma healing without spirituality. And so to me, spirituality, basically, God is love. Love is God, God is love. And so yeah, compassion, you said that I'm soft, and I really appreciate that, because I think there's so much power in that. You think of Bruce Lee and how he says, you want to be strong, be like water.
Ooh,
Be like water, be flexible. And so to me, that's like, an aspiration to help people be flexible and be like water.
I love that. I love because Bruce Lee is one of my favorites. Yeah. So
How could you not like Bruce Lee?
how can you not? He was so wise, right? But I just loved how you started that conversation and talking about uh, compassion, because I think in the work that we do, and bridging, into or segueing back into the IFS part and talking about that journey into EMDR. EMDR is incredible. And sometimes I find that even, when I look at my journey, David, and when you meet other clinicians who are coming into this beautiful, what I call a pathway, I view EMDR as a pathway to healing that we get to guide people down. And if you don't have that compassion for yourself first as a clinician, as you're learning the model and introducing, I think one of the things that EMDR did for me, and it's going to be beautiful to hear from you, right, is that it helped me as a growing therapist recognize that people were just not just a mind, that they weren't just a mind and a body that needed to break habits and change your thoughts. That's it. But that it helped me to recognize just how amazing we are and how we have all of these different parts, right? And then learning how to move with the model, as Dr. Francine said, make it your own, right? And then integrating different approaches. But I think that compassion piece is so needed, right? As we're learning to take that journey and share EMDR with the world. I'm interested in hearing from you, David, about the
Could
polyvagal.
I
What?
say one thing quickly
Yeah.
before you ask?
Mhm.
Just to comment on what you're saying, because so much stuff is coming up inside. Um, so my first response to you is yes, hell yes, everything you're saying. And then so a couple of things. So one, you said you see it as a path, and I think that's beautiful. I've always said, to me, it's like a map, right? It's like a map. So pathway, but you could see a bigger map too. And then now I'm gonna forget, with the compassion, and Francine, I think I really like Laurel Parnell's work. I think part of that compassion that is needed, and there's a lot of people in EMDR world that do this. I think it really is helpful to have a focus on that attunement, that we're with somebody else in the room, online, and being able to pick up on those waves and vibes of that other person, because when it comes down to it, trauma healing is about the relationship, right? So I love how you say there needs to be flexibility, and that's absolutely true. And also this like attunement to, um an ability to adapt to what's in the room right now as you're doing it.
So I want to add this here. I think these are all really great conversations. I think the one thing that's coming up for me is, how do we learn from basic training from Dr. Shapiro to adapt to the protocol and integrate IFS or attachment theory? I think when I went to my basic training, it was like, okay, there's 8 steps in the protocol. There's 8 phases. What do I do in the protocol? And then I went to my clients, there's 8 phases. And then when I realized I could beautifully bring my full self to the session, this DBT, this mindfulness, this spirit approach in resourcing, it was really just game on, because it's like, oh, I can sort of integrate myself now as long as you know what you're deviating from. And so I think what you're saying is very real. And then when I learned these advanced interventions of like IFS or ego state therapy, I think that journey, that basic knowledge can be enhanced in so many different kinds of ways there. So I think it's really beautiful when we get to that area.
Yeah, and I'll say something that again, I'm caveating a lot here. I this might not be very popular, but it's how I believe, and I'll be authentic. Um, I don't think EMDR does people justice with the basic training. I think there really should be more. I think there should be more time spent in it. I think it's like rush, 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 get people out, go do it. And as a result, I mean, I can't say enough how important, if you really want to do EMDR, how important consultation is. Because I've heard so many stories about people that just will go to the basic training, will try to do it all right, and then they just get so discouraged with it. And I think that what Francine Shapiro came up with is so beautiful and just so like earth changing. And there's so much to it, and there's a richness to it. And to try to rush through it, especially in this culture where you go to grad school. I'm a social worker, so you go to grad school for social worker. Come on, how much do they really dive into trauma? How much do they really dive into some of these really important things? So you get a taste of it in the basic training. But to me, it's like there needs to be so much more kind of growing, learning, reading, talking, experiencing before you could really feel like, okay, now I'm ready to go in and just bring all of this wonderful wisdom into the therapy room.
David, you know, I thank you for making the choice to be authentic. And I thank you for making the choice to shed light on something that Kathy and I are on this incredible journey. We started Journey Through the Eyes and we've leaped, you know, and we've made a choice to be present for each other and to be perfectly imperfect and just to catch each other in the journey and the
Yeah,
process
I love that.
and having these conversations. And that's why part of the mission is to have critical conversations. And you said something that really brought tears to my eyes, honestly, and talking about the journey. Because for me, what I'm discovering on this journey is I'm very passionate about the therapist. I'm very passionate about helping the therapist. I think that, we go to grad school and God bless us because we don't realize that incoming surge of information. And we oftentimes, because life is busy and we're familying and we're caretaking and we're, surviving and the brain doesn't have enough time, polyvagal, right? Doesn't have enough time to process all of that incoming information. And then we get thrust out because really the only way you can't, this is something I've heard, right? Is that all knowledge is just simply information until you put it to practice.
Mm.
It's just stored information like books, you know what I mean? Until we put it into practice and us becoming mental health providers, therapists, clinicians, and just professional helpers. Our field is to get out here and practice and take these risks. All the while, nobody's talking to us really about leaning into it, right? To get the confidence and competence. And then when you go to a training, and I think I know I needed to hear that. I needed somebody to say what I'm saying, which is that the EMDR trainings, because what Dr. Francine Shapiro has blessed, I tell my family, I said, this lady tapped into a divine portal or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what went on. I said, but and the more you have time to lean into, to comprehend, and to understand what this woman has brought to us. But it's hard to do that, right? In 3 days. And then tell someone, go out and serve somebody's brain and nervous system. And
Yeah.
then don't worry about it. Just keep doing it. Huh?
So I want to talk to you a little bit about this honor you.
Could I respond really quick? I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
interrupting the questions. I could hold off if you want to ask
No,
the
okay.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just into like the natural flow of this, and um, maybe you could edit that out if you want to. Um, so my response to you is just that Tamara really resonates a lot, and I love what you're saying. Yeah, she created a portal, man. She did, and I feel like that's why you asked me earlier or said something about, like how I reached out and how I want to, go and connect with everybody, doing podcasts on EMDR or IFS, because this country and this world, this society, I don't say this world, I don't know, but at least my experience with this society, we're all about isolation. And it doesn't work. And it doesn't work. And especially if we're doing this stuff, if we're doing trauma healing, we're doing EMDR, the new therapist, old therapists, we need each other. We need a community. We need to feel like we're able to support one another through all of this stuff, whether it's podcasting or the work with, consultees or consultants. It's that community I have found to be a game changer. And we can't do this work alone. And tapping into that. And even with my podcast and reaching out to other podcasters and other great people in the field, there's such a wealth of like just incredible people out there and heartfelt people and good people and wise people. And so tapping into that, I think, is just so important.
Yeah, I think the wisdom part that you're hitting on, I think once we have a collective wisdom, I think it's really difficult. I think when I developed Rewired 360 in the university setting, in my experience as a clinician being certified, I went to the basic training and it was like, I want to echo what you guys had said. It's so much information. And so what I have tried to do is to really kind of condense that into the key points in our basic training coming out next year and add some pieces about documentation as well, because they don't teach us how to even write a note. And so,
That's great.
documenting in the phase protocol. And so when you're documenting in a protocol, it's easier than even just a CBT note, and trying to help clinicians be comfortable with that. Right. And so just some different nuances. I want to help people have that community from basic training to certification to consultation to being a trainer, and just help them know that it's possible. Because I know in my training, I felt like this is so much, but how do I convey this message? And it was sort of like, oh, that's not necessarily for you. It takes so much time. And there was this like gatekeeper kind of saying, no, you can't. And I'm a little obstinate sometimes, I'm like, oh, yes, I can. And then Tamera comes along and it's like, girl, you can. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And so I think it's really valuable with our relationship and doing the podcast together, because we motivate each other. And I think internally, like you're speaking about isolation, right? And having this sense of even community where we're doing this and advancing this forward just is so valuable.
Absolutely. And I'll throw in a word about IFS
Yeah.
maybe. And because what you're saying is true, and I love what you're doing. And there is so much that's not taught that, then you seek out advanced trainings or so. In this book that I'm working on with 20 something other, leaders, trainers in the field, we're talking about the work of combining IFS with the MDR. And there's certain things that I think IFS brings that's crucial. Ego state could bring it as well. It doesn't have to be called IFS. And again, I hope I don't piss off IFS people. IFS is a beautiful model, And it's shamanistic in its roots, and you don't have to call it IFS. You could call it other things as well, but I'll call it IFS. So one thing that it brings is this understanding of the multiplicity of mind and parts. And so what Annabelle McGoldrick, who also trains EMDR IFS, she highlights how it's so important for budding therapists and budding trauma therapists who do EMDR to really be aware of their own parts that are coming up while doing the trauma work. And whether you're talking about the polyvagal and one autonomic nervous system meeting another autonomic nervous system, but what's going on internally with you as the person doing the healing is just as important in some ways as what's going on with the other person. And so that was just another piece that, that I don't think that's really taught a lot in basic training.
Oh, David, I just could hang out with you all day and just chop it
Cool, let's
up.
do it.
Okay, just chop it up. Because I think what you're sharing is you're just turning the light on. Kathy and I, um, you're just confirming so much for me, for us on this journey, because we've leaned into talking about the passion and the desire of wanting to raise the standard in our field, right? To be able to, if I, well, not if, like I want to ask permission, but because David, you already got us out here having bold conversation today. And so I am passionate about, and this is me piggybacking on what you talked about, internal family systems, having a shamanistic presence and healing virtue and all the things to it. I totally believe that we are in a time where we, as the healer, well, as the therapists or the quote unquote clinicians, are being called to return to ancient roots and become the healers. And remember that the clinician, and that's just a modern term that we've been given, based on our culture, society, and all the things and ethics and all that. But the whole essence of what we are doing for those of us who have chosen, some of us are called to the field, some of us feel like we're chosen to be here. And for the people who feel that presence of being chosen, we're rising up because we recognize that the world, the families, the children, the men, the women, they're calling for healing. And so internal family systems, what I'm hearing from you, we're able to bridge or marry, right? Create this union between such an incredible therapy like EMDR that takes a look at the power of healing in a human being's body. You can't get no more divine and spiritual than that, right? That there is this healing potential, not that we got to go find it, but there is a healing potential already inside of every human being. And then we get to use internal family systems to kind of disrupt a bit this Western view that you only have one mind, and to help people to recognize, and I'm just going to dare to say this, y'all clean it up if it ain't good, okay? But, there's so many people who, quote unquote, I meet clients, and I've said it myself. Am I crazy? What's wrong with me? I don't know. There's this part of me. Why come I can't do this? And what is going on? I don't like that part. I don't, and we don't recognize the mind, and we don't understand what's really going on there. And internal family systems to me is, it's like, if EMDR is the map, if you will, right? Then it's like internal family systems gives us a deeper path, another hidden path, right?
Yes, and well, let me say this. Bruce Hersey, who's like my hero, he is my consultant. He started Syzygy, which is online, and they have in-person classes too. He's working on the book with me, um, and he's a huge part of it because he does IFS informed EMDR. And so for people who have EMDR training, he kind of brings in level one learning the IFS basics, and then incorporating it into this world. He would say, just like you said, um, he says, we take EMDR, we set the GPS. That shows us where we heading, but then we calculate it, and then the road that we're taking, all the little beings on the journey that are showing up, that's IFS. So, and other people have said this too. One of the criticisms of EMDR, which I do believe, again, there's a awakening, more awareness, and more attention to this. But sometimes you go to basic training and then you go and you get excited and you're like, yes, I'm going to do this EMDR magic. But you trample on a lot of parts that we have inside. We have parts that, Dick Schwartz, the creator of IFS, calls protectors and then exiles. So, in a nutshell, and I'm definitely condensing this a lot, exiles are ones that are holding these heavy weights of trauma. And so when we do EMDR, IFS informed EMDR, you're finding these exiles and you're doing EMDR with the exiles. But we don't want to just go to the exiles without permission from the protectors. So when you're bringing in IFS, you're saying, wait a minute, let's slow this down. And as we're going on this pathway towards healing trauma, which is beautiful, do we have anything in the system that's not ready to go there yet? And if so, let's wait until we could befriend them and get permission from them to continue down the journey. And I think that's crucial.
I want to pop in here for a second. There's been so much discussed here. I think I want to go ancient here, back to the roots for a minute. I think the Spartan comments here, I want to talk about this idea with the Wounded Warrior program back east. If you're interested, I can talk about it. But what they were saying was that the veterans here in Idaho, they have a coalition that will, a nonprofit actually, that will send warriors to this intense recovery program for 3 days, when they have distress. And so what they're doing is having them be surrounded by a collective experience. And it was described to me that, we don't engage in community like we used to. And so there's a community of veterans there that surrounds them. And it was described, they said, when warriors come home from battle in the Spartan time, the community gathered around and received them. And we've lost that voice and that connection with the community. And so their model is after that component as well. And so I think that's just really beautiful. I think that communal experience is what we're trying to create here. Is you don't have to compete with me. We can be in a blue ocean over here on the side, chilling out. We don't have to be in the red ocean like sharks eating away at each other, and that sense of community. The other thing is, like we were talking about the brain and the innate healing that's come forward. It seems like magic. I tell people it's magic. One of my patients says I'm here for all the tricks. So, IFS and ego state and all these little parts are what I would consider the tricks. And so I was talking to a group of business people. I was trying to explain EMDR, and we're in a more conservative, less receptive culture where I live in Idaho. And it was more like this, what do you call it? Like witchery, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. It was received as like, what is this? What are you trying to bring to us? And so there's some stigmas around that. And so the person, is presenting to, I explained EMDR, I explained the brain, and then the question was, what's the technology? So it's just the brain doing the healing, and we don't actually know what it is. And this person couldn't just get past what's the technology. And I think in this era with social media and technological advancement, that concept is very difficult, I think, for people to receive, that our brain can actually be more powerful and compute millions of times more rapidly than other brains. And
So
we,
my question for this gentleman,
yeah,
if it was a gentleman,
yeah,
and this is not any offense. I'm not intending any offense.
yeah,
I wonder what it feels like for him if he takes a moment and just drops into his heart. And at times you go into your heart and we're all in our head, business, numbers, money,
yeah,
power, whatever, which is, the part of our air we breathe. But when you go into your heart, there's a logic and a rhythm, right? A rhythm.
yeah,
And there's a different consciousness which you could bring to the table, which adds so much to the logical brain.
yeah. Yeah, I think I'm trying, and hard, how to express that is sort of sometimes people, maybe you're scared of what they can't see or feel. And so when we have, our brain doing the sensory stuff, which computers can't, and all that really juicy stuff that we incorporate is just amazing. I also think what you're saying is very powerful about the parts. But I ask my patients, I haven't been IFS trained, I do some ego state work. But also the point, what you're saying very powerful is the consent. And so we talk about this in domestic violence,
Yeah.
we talk about this sort of in sexual behavioral components, but we don't really translate that part to consent among parts. I think what you're saying is so powerful.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And it's not me. Other people have said it. Annabelle McGoldrick. I'll definitely shout out to her. Um, I think that when kind of going back to this kind of talk that you're having with people in business and in this realm of just computer technology and explain the scientific nature of this to me. What also comes up is a conversation I was having yesterday, which God, I don't know when I'll get to editing it. Hopefully, hopefully soon. Um, but it was beautiful, and we were talking about the human body. And when you think about the human body, there is no other computer machine. I don't care how good technology is. The human body is amazing and we don't understand half of it. And
Yeah,
so when we're looking at the human body, this is, I would even say it's not our body. I don't think screw commodifying everything. It's not our body. It's something that's on loan to us that helps us experience the world that we're in right now. So we're using this incredible instrument to take in being in this realm at this moment in time throughout our lives. So, how could you overlook the most important, beautiful instrument that you have at your disposal? And if you're only in your head, you're overlooking that instrument.
and
And
that's what
so
EMDR
EMDR, IFS therapy, whatever your doorway into it is it's this appreciation and understanding for this instrument that we have in our possession for, what, 80 years, if we're lucky, 90 years. So it's learning how to use it in a way that schools don't teach us.
David, I just I tell my clients, I said, oh my gosh, don't get me on my soapbox because, and not that I'm calling us or objectifying us. I said, but we live in a modern society where we're driving cars, we, even if we don't know the full mechanics of the car, we do understand how they work. We know that if the gas is empty, if the tank is, we know not to go get milk, David, and put it in the gas tank trying to fill the gas up. I said, however, I said, gone are the days though that we can understand that, but we don't understand our mind and our body, but we're using it, we're functioning in it. It is alive. It is, moving us. The body is such an incredible, critical vehicle. And I know that a lot happens because, some people kind of get all in an uproar because so many things that have happened to people and human beings in their bodies and all the things. But if we can begin to see and honor the body, honor the brain and the nervous system for what it really is, right? And it's a servant and it's doing all that it can to keep us alive so we can take this incredible journey and experience life in all of its different dimensions. And then you have beautiful therapies like internal family systems, EMDR, that for those life experiences that have left those wounds, right? We now know that healing is possible. One of the things that I wanted us to backtrack to before we have to surrender you to your Friday, something you said that I think can help us and help other clinicians, and I want to validate us, first of all, in saying that it is very real that we are giving most of us what we can, all that we can, and that we are enough, right? We are enough. What we are needing to do with the changing of the tides and all of the things that are coming up, in mental health and the people who are crying out for support is raise the bar, right? Can you talk a little bit about when you were sharing on how the therapist needs to do their own work? In other words, you didn't say it like that, but that's just what I took away from it, that when we get on this journey, that it invites us into doing our own journey. Can you talk a little bit about that and why it's so, I'm going to use the word necessary, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. I think IFS for me is not really a therapeutic modality. It's kind of become a way of life where once you're aware of like these parts inside of yourself, you want to keep checking in with them, even on a daily basis. You want to kind of get a sense of your body of like, where am I at? How am I taking information? How am I not? So I think, I'm currently seeing a therapist for IFS and working with my own parts, which I feel is like this incredible, amazing spiritual journey in a way. And I think that I love how you said the word invite, and I'm trying to use that more in my therapy. Like I invite you to think of it this way, or I invite you to this. Um, but I think sometimes it's a demand. I think sometimes it's a demand where we're sitting with the client and trauma enters into the space, and all of a sudden our trauma comes knocking on the door and it demands that we work with it and it demands that we listen to it because now all of a sudden all of our parts are all in an uproar because we're connected with the person that we're working with. So I think it is really important to recognize that we're working with this, an incredible energy of trauma. And we're going to get triggered at times. We're going to get activated at times. And it's crucial to understand what are the signs that we are getting activated. What are the signs that our own body is kind of struggling with something, and then how do we address that in an effective way so that we really can be there to give space to the clients that we're working with, because it can't be about us. It's about providing that space so that we're working with them. So how do we take our own time? I mean, in this field, we all talk about self-care, 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 but then we go into these jobs like I did with community mental health, and really, how much realistic time do they give us for self-care? So they're saying it, but so I think it's imperative for us to really take a good look at our life, the surrounding environment, our where we're at, and how do we take some of this beautiful healing and not feel like, oh, I'm the healer and you're the client, but no, we're swimming in this water together. And when we're in this moment of healing, like I'm not going to be talking about my stuff, I'm talking about your stuff, and providing space to allow you to access that inner power within you. But then I'm going to need some other time in some other day to be able to also kind of check in and say, okay, what am I holding inside me, and what am I going through?
David, you've got to come back. This is
Well, you're coming
something.
on mine, so we'll
Well,
we'll
I'm
continue the
coming.
conversation
Look,
on
I
my
don't know if we're
podcast.
going to be leaving, is the thing, because you said something that I think is beautiful. Well, you shared something that brought something up for me that I think is beautiful for the therapist. And that is that we are sharing in a journey. We really are the human beings that chose to go to grad school, do all the internship. We're digesting all this information so we can get in the water with people. Sometimes that water is murky, sometimes it's quicksand, sometimes the tides are so high, sometimes it's so super deep, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's freezing. But I hope we are hearing that we are choosing to get in the waters. Sometimes it's caves. So, and we're choosing to go through these experiences. And the reason that I think is so important in what you're sharing is recognizing that we not only do we want to be prepared and competent, but that we recognize how powerful of a witness, how powerful it is to be present and to take a journey with compassion and really, really hold space. And how divine that is, how incredible, and how that speaks to our humanity, our spiritualness, to share. And it, and in a Christian way, in the Bible, it says sharing another person's burdens.
That's where healing is. That's it right there. If you want to sum up healing, I said this to my client that I just met with just before we got on. I said there's two things about trauma healing, if you want to sum it up. Now, those two things are very difficult, but two things: awareness, right, of what's going on in our body, what's going on around us, and awareness of how we're reacting to it. And the second thing, which is what you said beautifully, being able to express it and feeling like it's being heard and understood and felt by another person. That's it. That's trauma healing.
I'm just speechless. Incredible. Such a beautiful presence, right?
Yeah, that's where the magic is. And getting there, that's the other thing about IFS. I don't know what EMDR would say with this, but IFS says that it's really an unraveling. It's I forget what it's called, but it's a model where we're trying to observe the parts within us so that they could soften, they could relax, they could give us a little bit of space. Because as the layers come off, that's when we're going to find all the goodness in us of confidence, clarity, being able to realize that we could walk through anything.
Hairs on my arm, if I had any, are standing up.
If I had any. Well, thank you so much, David, for coming. I think this is so powerful. I think there's just so much content, right? I think so cool on podcasts. Now we can capture the magic of this interpersonal conversation and spread it. It's like if we could just duplicate this conversation and share it, would be amazing.
And we can. And the thing is too that I give EMDR credit for, right? I said this yesterday and it just like really hit us. If it wasn't for EMDR, I never would have met you guys. So it's like a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It
cool.
just brings things and brings us together, David, it has really been, and I do mean this, an honor meeting you and
That's an
sharing,
honor meeting
you know,
you and connecting and finding new friends.
Yeah.
So I feel the feeling is very, very mutual.
wow, just incredible. I'm hoping that for our listening audience, that for this one, you rewind, get your pencil and your
Yeah.
notepad, and really be present. You gave me a gift, David, today, and that
Well,
gift
thank you.
is to take it in, and be the change you want and need to see in the world. Take it in, you know. And so I thank you for that. I really do. I thank you for that. And so I am so grateful just that the powers that be are sending incredible professionals, human beings like yourself, David, to us here at Journey Through the Eyes. And thank you so much for spending time. Do you have any words that you want to leave with the audience for today? Anything you want to encourage or inspire them to do before we surrender you to your Friday?
Well, sure. One thing that was told to me that I'll repeat. So none of this is my own wisdom here, but compassion is such a beautiful thing, right? To have in our lives. Self-compassion is so important. And the way that you get more compassion, self-compassion, is by giving it away. And so, in your day, look and see, who maybe needs that little bit of smile, that extra kind of pat on the back, and just give that, because you're going to get that back. You're going to feel that. And, what you guys are doing is so beautiful, with kind of putting all of this positive energy out there in the airwaves. And, yeah, I just hope people, listening could feel the love and the respect and just the energy that I'm feeling here with us right now.
David, well, we thank you. Um, we have so many incredible things coming and unfolding, and today was super special. And so we are thanking everyone. I'm going to turn this hot mic over to Kathy, who is going to share with us just, new things that are going on with Rewire 360 and how to subscribe and where to subscribe at.
Just you have those moments where you're grateful. And so I'm really grateful today that we're having this discussion. And just find us. Tamera and I both do consultation to help you rewire 360 and arise psychotherapy. And we're here at, recording every Friday. And we'll have our documentation training coming up in July. And just a bunch of other trainings. Grief and loss is my specialty. Tamera does holistic treatment. And so we're just very happy here. And yeah, we'll have a good weekend. It's June and it's hot. So we hope you enjoy yourself and drink lots of water. And we'll see you next time.
Have an incredible weekend.